Welcome back in our CME capacity building on bioethics. We will focus on ethics in biobank this afternoon. So we will have two speakers, source persons, or speakers from our institution. The first one is Mrs. Yaya Fahiroh, PhD, and then will be continued by Prof. Rika, Prof. Sofia Mubarika. And then after that, we will also still have the talk of Professor Dick Willems. And so we will start with the current situation of biobank development here in Indonesia, and specifically what has been developed in our institution and Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, UGM. And for that talk, we would like to invite Mrs. Yaya Fahiro. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Yeah, PhD. And so, and she's one of the key person in biobank team in our institution, and so that's why we would like to invite her to give the illustration about what's going on here in biobank in our institution. Ms. Buyaya, kami persilahkan. Time's yours.
Thank you very much for the organizer for your kind invitation. Here I would like to represent our team, Biobank Development Team in Faculty of Medicine. Before I start, have any one of you know that actually we have biobank service in our faculty? Have you ever heard biobank? Yes. Who has just heard about biobank as for now? So everyone quite familiar with the term. So I may skip a lot then. Oh, how do I do this? Okay, this is what we often get. Research is something that Faculty of Medicine is one of the front runner in research in health in Indonesia. Many of us has been as a front runner in the research, especially regarding the collection of biomaterials and data. Many cases, PIs often finish their study and publish it, and get people contacted them. Oh yeah, I'm so interested in your data, but then the research has been finished, and therefore many of the case, often people came to us because I was in the molecular biology laboratory, and they asked us, how can I do this? There are certainly technicality issues because perhaps the logistics were different, but especially also related to the bioethic, related to the recruitment of subjects. Therefore, many discussion coming that they had to contact the subjects because the aim was different. Some people said, well, many of our patients were already passed away because of cancer, for instance. Therefore, we cannot continue. It's a pity because in order to collect data as well as biosamples require a lot of efforts, including manpower and money. Therefore, the role of biobank becoming important in this case in order to determine that research can be done in long term in a good manner regarding technical and also non-technical things. If I know that you have known already what is biobank, and Professor Willem, it will be mostly introduction. Therefore, perhaps you can skip some of the introduction.
Yes, I skip one.
Yes, that's one. It's a collection of biological material and the associated data and the information stored in an organized system for a population and large subset of population. So that's the terminology. Biobank and biorepository is something that can be substituted to each other, but in Indonesia, in one of the decree, it mentioned that biorepository is something related to tissue repository, while biobank is something related to research, a non-tissue things. But actually, globally, they can be used together. Biobank becoming important and was introduced since 1996. And in 2005, Time magazine has already stated that biobank is one of 10 ideas that's changing the world right now. And as you can see here in one of the chart, starting from 2000, the term biobank was being mentioned more in PubMed. So it shows that the role for biobank in, especially in health research, is becoming very important. But I will not discuss about research outside the health issues because I don't have the capacity to discuss it. Okay, this is one of the state-of-the-art biobank, UK biobank, that was started in 2006. Their aim was to improve the prevention of diagnosis and treatment of wide range of serious and life-threatening illness. They plan at first to recruit about 5,000 people, 500,000 people, 500,000 people, without no by collecting their data from a GP, inviting them to be included as a cohort. So by having them coming to a post, and then their data, their sample are collected regularly, and up until now, the data is being provided for anyone. So, of course, there should be a regulation related to how can be the data is distributed. In the morning, there was a discussion about big data. UK Biobank provide big data as well. In 2012, they already announced the database. And from 2017, the genomic data was already been released as hundreds of publication and research has been produced based on the UK Biobank panel. This is Indonesia. When we started our idea to develop biobank, people ask us, what is biobank? Are you trying to provide capital from this because you are banking something, and banking is about money? So there was a worriness. So this is the easiest way from us as a team to show to our colleagues at the faculty the before and the after picture. And this, they say, oh yeah, so biobank is that you're trying to put our samples in a manner that we are easy to find them. Yes, of course, because we put them into a structure, we put barcoding, but we also put some of your data into the database. So from that on, the resistancy was becoming less and less. So it was a good way to approach. So that's one issue. The other thing is, biobank offer a structured way of putting your biosample, including your data, in a structured way, but also biobank is being developed everywhere. We can say that in the Faculty of Medicine is one of the front runner for a biobank, but then there are also a lot of biobank. Data by specimen in long-term storage. In addition to that, each of the biobank would always be connected. Regardless that UK Biobank is a big biobank by itself, but it is connected with different biobanks on which when someone asks, we are in two organization of biobank. They have this platform where people can ask, do you have this kind of collection? We have this PI wants to do research on this and require this certain characteristic of samples. Asking to different biobanks, and they say, oh yeah, I have the collection. So biobank will help researcher if they want to do research and providing samples without they really have to start things from the scratch. So the terminology like data sharing is also one of the major theme of biobank, which is also one of the issue. It doesn't work. Where should I? Oh, can I have the next slide, please? It doesn't work. Okay, data sharing also included subjects' privacy. Their data will be distributed, their sample will be distributed, and is there any way to protect the privacy of the subjects? So that's another thing of biobank. Similar to other studies required informed consent. Biobank knows several types of informed consent. It comes from how does the biobank develop? If the biobank develop the novel biobank on which API or a institution, they or he or she collect data and collect biomaterial solely based of research. The ethic that is following is knowing as opt-in. You come to someone and asking, would you like to be in our research? Yes, I will. If the subject say yes, meaning the system, they use the term opt-in. But say, for instance, in a hospital having leftover samples from diagnostic or for treatment or taking a section from cancer, for instance, and then the leftover of diagnostic or the leftover from the biopsy or from cancer tissue that is not being used, and they ask the patient, would you like to donor your leftover from your diagnosis for research? And when someone say, I don't want to be into that system, for secondary biobank, they can use opt-out, on which patient will say, I don't want to enter biobank. I only want to do my clinical, so I want to be enrolled only for clinical management, but not for the biobanking. So it's opt-out. Clinical and research aims for biobank can be vice versa. And for research, it can be disease-oriented or it can be population-based, on which at first the biobank doesn't determine what sort of research they want to do. And everybody knows it's like ethic 101, when for doing research, you have to determine what is the aim of your research. While biobank mostly doesn't have the specific aim. So ethic, legal, and social issue for disease-oriented as well as for cohort are different as well. This is an example of clinical biobanking for those who doesn't really know how does biobank work. This is the clinical biobank on which donor will be consented, and then procedure for taking samples will be done. Samples and then will be transported and received in the biobank, having them collect storage. And the storage is in a certain way in order for the biospecimen to be able to be tracked down, including the parallel data for long-term storage. And with all the thing that is being happen to the data as well as to the samples will be known by the system. So when did the sample taken? When did the sample arrive in the lab? When did the sample was being processed? Who wants to, who see the data? Who had the share of the specimen? When did the sample was being sent off or being destroyed and let out from the system? Everything is being recorded at the biobank. Standard, quality, and conformity are intact in the biobank. So if we look in illustration of clinical biobank, we know that biobank is only a business for people who work in the lab or between clinician and their subjects. But biobank is something that is really complex, on which subject, researcher, clinician, lawyers, management, funders, ethician, government, funding body, even pharmaceutical company are part of the biobank. They are the stakeholders of the biobank, and they are determined how does biobank should work. if in Indonesia we understand what is technology 401 or education 401, Biobank we only got to 3.0. Sorry. So Biobank 1.0 is about quantity. If you have a lot of samples, a lot of data, then you are super bank. But when the quality coming, it is Biobank 2.0. The number of sample is not really important anymore as long as you know the status of your samples. If you can answer whether your sample is in good quality, whether your sample is standing in the operating table already for a few hours, therefore the quality is deteriorated. But the 3.0 Biobank is also included the stakeholders, on which the needs of stakeholders coming with the sustainability. If we put sustainability in this sense, legal, ethic, and social issues is there. Infrastructure and bioinformatics should be there as well, added to manpower. To summarize this, we can say that biobanking is a very expensive business. Therefore, biobank is not only about that you have freezers or you have so many techniques or you have so many samples, but also how you make use of those information and how can you make everything sustain, not only about money. So that's how we are move forward with our team. This is our happy family with biobanking. We have people from Groningen and also from WHO IARC France that mentor us for already almost 5 years. We are a member of international biobank organizations, and we in Indonesia we try to have a snowball effect on biobank throughout Indonesia on becoming the coordinator for biobank network for its health research already from 2017. We have our development team and we have people who run the biobank. In this case, however, we only have technician and data manager, and yet we still have to define who will be our manager. The aim of our biobank is for the vision is for sustainable research. We provide service for standardized long-term biosample and spiral data. We want to facilitate interdisciplinary, interinstitutional, and international research collaboration and increase the research feasibility in the faculty. And we also would like to support the increase of research reputation at the institution. And just to emphasize, this biobank is an infrastructure. So we are not a capital body. So this is what we have done this is the 4th year. We did our first years to model the biobank and in the first hand by using samples that's already been there. So the first picture I present you was a real situation on which we try to locate everything in one deep freezer where everyone just so what people did in the lab when they try to find samples in the freezer, basically they take out everything pop, 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 from different tubes, from different boxes. They put out everything, and actually they destroy the quality of other sample. And when they finish, they basically put everything in. And we help them for whatever sample in that freezer, put them into the system. We develop the bioinformatics because we didn't have money to buy readily made. Since we have people on board, we only use one-dimensional barcode. If you go to supermarket or you go to a store, by only barcoding, we put everything in and it connected to the system. That's what we developed. From that experience, we could do about 12,000 files. Everything now is in the system. That works also together with how we want to educate researcher and the faculty. And the second phase was to do prospective modeling, on which we invite scientists who has biosample collection and they want to start. We help them to determine how can the sample being collected, what is the storage, etc. And then after the prospective modeling, we open our service, started from May 2018, and now we have our permanent facility being prepared in the research laboratory, and we have the capacity for DNA isolation as well as blood sample separation. So from that technical thing, we provide a biobank website. You can have a look, and in biobank community, sharing capacity and openness are two things that we have to keep. So in the website, we provide what have we done so far, our activities. We also share our policy and our SOPs open for everyone. We also provide summary of data. So I mentioned to you one of our mission is to facilitate the collaboration between different PIs. So what we do so far is everyone who decide to be included in a biobank, we ask their permission to have their name in it, what kind of study they're having, what kind of sample they collect, and what sort of the number of their subject and the number of their files. That's it. Whoever wants to use their sample, they should connect with the PI. They can connect through us, or they can connect directly to the PI. So Biobank is intermediate body in order for the PI to work with each other. Therefore, we try to endorse everyone to work together through our website. So from that experience, this is the ethic, legal, and social issue that we can identify so far and what we have done so far. For retrospective modeling, we could identify the problem and the potential that we have. We can see that people are doing so much effort on research, but most Indonesian funding having restricted number of money and also restricted year they can focus on. Therefore, they could only collect not many numbers of patients, and it may means that the public health impact is quite low. Different sample collection method was detected. Therefore, the quality also different. And there was a worriness, as I mentioned before, banking is more scary than repository. So the problem of sharing was there, that people really want to hold their collection with them and so afraid of sharing with others. This is what we do with our summary database sharing in public domain. Therefore, their collection will be open, but the privacy of the subject is covered. And we had also question about trust, whether scientists can trust the biobank, whether biobank will misuse their collection by sharing the sample or the data without their knowledge. And what is the most important thing, that up until now, there is no legal frame for biobank in health research in Indonesia. In prospective modeling, we try to put all the problem and the potential of how we try to overcome the problem. We did almost 2 years of discussion with people from our ethical committee. Regardless that there is a capacity for biobank to have broad consent, on which people could be recruited without determine the aim, the specific aim without determination. But our IRBs suggest us for scientists who would like to be in the biobank, they should apply two different consent. The first one is specific consent. The second one is consent for long-term collection. It is kind of difficult because then subject might ask, why am I have to sign two different things? And when we try in some clinic, patient who was approached by the clinician, it was funny story. They was approached. This person was approached because he would undergo a amputation, and the leg that was that would be removed will not be used, of course, by the patient, but it will be useful for research. And the clinician approached, and the person said, "Okay, just take whatever you ask, because I'm not going to use it anyway." And then once we bring the paperwork, and could you please sign this consent? And they ask, why am I have to sign anything? I say, yes, but you have to sign it. And then it becoming worse, because then once the patient had a discussion with the family and ended up, they say, well, I don't feel comfortable with this. Signing is something very odd in my experience. So I will say no to donate my amputated leg. So it was a very interesting experience. For the prospective modeling, in order for us to gain trust from scientists, we also put in our system that the database is only open for data manager. Even technician doesn't have any access for demography or clinical data. PI can only access for their own data. Manager doesn't have any access at all. Data manager knows everything. Sharing is still being endorsed, added to the knowledge that MTA should be there, because we have decree on MTA nationwide. So we have also to endorse, once you want to share something with other institution or send them abroad, please make sure that MTA is there. The next question is, who owns the data? Who owns the sample? Is it the PI, or is it the institution, or is it still belongs to the patients? We also built a biobank network in order to endorse the knowledge, not only technically, but also for ELSI. And also currently we have research on biobank legislation, on which we ask you to be part of it, for academic paper, and also for modeling for hospital-based biobank. For hospital-based biobank, we also would like to try out the broad informed consent, asking them about their knowledge on custodianship, asking them what they feel, what subject feel about being in a research. And our latest baby is preliminary biobank population study, which with HDSS, on which we would try to approach people not only based on their data collection, but also we would try to see what they feel about being in research for people who still healthy in our Sleman cohort. The question from that is public trust, whether they understand direct and indirect benefit of them to be in a research, because most of our research is hospital based, on which people knows that if you are in the research, then it may help us to cure the disease in the future. And also question about whether people in the population understand the multiple and long-term use of samples, whether they understand that there is a possibility for their sample to be used abroad, to be used by multiple studies, to even perhaps to be used by different pharmaceutical company. And is there any religious or belief hindrance related to the sample donation? And the question is, who will be custodian to my samples, as well as the issue on return of result and incidental finding. From that, I would like to close my presentation with, this is Gregory C. Simon. He is the head of Moonshot project in US. He had cancer and he donored his sample. And once he asked to donor his sample, then the question coming to his head, what will the researcher do with my samples? And then he came with very interesting statement that biobanker needed to do what patients think is being done to speed up progress in cancer, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. And biobank is not about collecting as many samples as you can, but it's also about sharing. Biobanks is not about hoarding. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Bu Yaya. So I think we need to open a small session for question and answer first before if you have to move on to the other agenda. Prof. Rika would like to start commenting first.
Yeah. Thank you, Biaya, for born start to develop this biobank that need not easy, that we know it takes many years, so many years to develop, but with thanks to the team that the biobanks at Gajah Mada is, I think, one of the first in Indonesia. This is a big challenge for us, but we know more. We do want to know more about data sharing and also result sharing. Is it possible? This is the first. And then how is the mechanism that we can approach and access to the data sharing and result sharing? Thank you.
I speak quite loud, and using the microphone makes me having trouble to answer. The first question is regarding the data sharing. When we first share our idea on Biobank in 2015, people got scared, as I mentioned before. Are you going to take everything of my samples and data? That's it? That was the majority of the question. And then we realized that when we brought the idea from the West, on which Biobank is already established, on which Biobank has collect their sample by their own, and they have the ways to share. Therefore, we try to step backward a bit. Now we operate as repository, on which we we invite PI to be included in the biobank in order to have a appropriate sampling condition and in a structured manner. So we operate as repository for now. How can we distribute? We don't have the right to distribute. PI has the sole right to distribute. When PI sign contract with us, so we ask them to sign a contract, minimum for 1 year. We know what, how many samples that they will collect every year, what sort of sample for what sort of study, and do you have ethical permission from the IRB. That was and also they have to sign contract with us. So they have to have like 5 different things. And then once the sample comes to Biobank, they know that the summary will be posted in our website. So up until now, for our prospective biobank, we already open for business. We have 11 studies with us. We have around 500 subjects with us in about 5,000 files. And it is open for everyone to see the summary. And when someone open our website and say, yeah, she has this kind of study, and she has this kind of sample. This is the same as what I want to do. So we will invite whoever interested to share the sample with the PI to contact the PI. And the PI can have a discussion to whoever who's interested to use the sample. So the right remains with the PI. So when the PI has an agreement with them, we would and perhaps would like to aliquot their samples. Only request from the PI will be heard by Biobank. I want my samples in this characteristic to be taken out from the system, regardless whatever the aim. So when we discuss with IRB, they say Biobank doesn't have anything related to the ethics in this current business, in this repository business, because the right to distribute remains with the PI. And then for research, how does the data produce? Again, that remains to the PI, because we don't have a hand on the data that is produced by the PI. Hopefully, with the cohort biobank, our team will move forward on which biobank is part of the body that collected. That is the other business, and the ethic, legal, and social issue will be different compared to the repository role that we are playing now.
Yeah, as I learned from Sweden, uh, in Sweden they have what they call it biobank, which cover all of the population in the city, and they have a cohort study for that population, so they can have something to alert, because there are some a risk to be disease something developed. So do you also have something like that to cover the population in Yogyakarta to be to support the what we call it Indonesia Sehat 2025, because this is very important. Yogyakarta have the longest expectancy of life, and also even though we are poor in the term of salary, income, low income, but yeah, VIP and have the longest life expectancy. Yeah, if you have this kind of idea, that will be good for Indonesia to be as a good model for the first biobanks, bank tissue, but also for the prevention, as you mentioned, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment.
Yeah. It will be very ideal for that, but even worldwide, it's very rare to have that kind of biobank because the infrastructure will be expensive. The ethic, legal, and social issue is more complex, but it is a very good idea. We like to try to approach through HDSS, the Sleman cohort, but even for them to do yearly survey, it requires them a lot of money. So if we collect, no, the thing is from ethic and legal issue, perhaps Dr. Prof. Willem, you can also add up some of the discussion. Asking people to have their sample taken periodically in Indonesia is something that really needed to be. It's something still a challenge. We did in our in HDSS population try to see what they think of having blood samples taken. We got very various response, but many of them saying that they are not in supporting for research because I'm feeling well. Why do you need to take my blood for? What is the aim of that? Will I get a direct benefit, etc. In order to get into what is Sweden is there now, it requires us to undergo multiple challenge and obstacles in order to get into that direction. And it has to be nationwide or provincial-wide policy from my point of view. Perhaps you can also add some of the discussion.
Yes. Um, well, I'm We have several projects in Holland going on too, where people are asked to give their tissue for research aims. Especially in Amsterdam, we have a very big cohort of people from Amsterdam that are asked to regularly give their tissue, and they're also interviewed about health issues regularly, and all that goes into a biobank called the Helios Biobank. And up to now, that biobank is filling up quite quickly. And maybe there is less, people are more willing to contribute their blood, even if their blood and other things, even if they have a feeling that there's no direct benefit. But that's also because there has been quite a lot of public attention to that Helios Biobank and that Helios study. So I think it's the way to go, but I think you need also a lot of public awareness of what these things are for. So before starting that biobank issue, there was really a lot of public publicity around it, so that people knew that it was about what it was about when they were asked. Yes.
I agree with you. Our mentor is from Groningen, and
Yeah.
they have Lifelines Biobank.
Yeah, I know.
A cohort.
Yes.
On which their research has reached to the position that they can say that, okay, we have in our population this number of pre-diabetic people, and it has very strong public health health policy.
Yeah.
But then for that, we really need to have something from up, not bottom up, from top down policy,
Yeah.
in order for Biobank to operate as one of the key structure for health maintenance.
I think, and maybe to add, for the Helios Biobank in Amsterdam, one of the challenges was to get also the ethnic minorities into the biobank, because one of the questions is the distribution of health problems and among pre-diabetics and people with preclinical forms of disease into that biobank. So there's been a specific effort to get to also have the participation of the ethnic minorities, so the people from Turkey, Morocco, and other areas. And up to now, that's succeeding quite well, I think. Yeah. So it's a huge biobank now with a lot of variation in the population. Yeah.
I think also, if I can be back to a lot of slides before, showing that Biobank is actually entities that has so many stakeholders. Everyone has to be in one line of agreement that this is important. We as academician cannot say that, oh yeah, this is like Profinka suggests, it's very ideal. But then people in the government say, well, what about funding? And the community say, what about I don't have direct benefit? And also infrastructure, who own the samples, etc. If we can be in one understanding as what is already going on in the West, probably the obstacle will be much less.
Yeah, thank you. I think Jogja Istimewa become one entry that you can ask to the one research daerah to think about how this can be population population wide. And the second one is we have Dr. Jody Wisnu, who's working for philanthropy something that this will be good. Yeah. Anyway, we can propose, because you have the keyword collaboration. So I think through this collaboration, sustainability and working together, synergy will be great. That this biobank not only for this institution but also for population wide. Yes, thank you.
With the help of our senior member, it will be very helpful for us.
Prof. Yati, would you like to comment?
Thank you very much. I have heard about biobank, but I know very little. Even this is the first time, and I did have surveillance studies in all over the country from Sabang till Merauke. So I think you need also to popularize it. Yeah, because it is very important, and yeah, this is as congratulations, and I'm very interested. Maybe we will talk with you further. Yeah.
So just to conclude my they now building a warehouse of biobanks
Oh.
on which all of their surveillance results putting there. And they said, well, you can use our samples, but then they have to develop a protocol of sharing. They have to develop their data protection system, a lot of things. Regardless that they have very precious data provided, but they cannot share yet for that kind of reason. So legal, ethic, and social issues are much, from my point of view, are much more critical compared to the infrastructure issue. And on that, we really need to work together.
Mm.
So it's beyond, we are in the infrastructure capacity. Many of the issues are not in our hand. For instance, perhaps bioethics can help us to speed up the knowledge, the understanding on ethics in biobanking.
Yeah.
Because many of our scientists still thinking that biobank is about collecting samples,
Yeah.
putting the freezers, and that's it. But there are many of understanding still need to be
Yeah. Where we don't work hand in hand. So yeah, okay. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I think the idea is about the dialogue. Yeah, Prof. Nato.
Yeah, by banking related to two issues, I think. One issue is a social activities. On the other hand, because of it's really very expensive, it should be the direction of economics business. Uh, is there any communication between what universities, I mean UGM, effort in developing business session? I think chaired by who is Dr. No, Dr. Swargo, university level. Yeah, it means that if there is honor related to this, not only with the School of Medicine, but also in the university level, it will be broadening and then strengthening the organization, and also could be under license or under legal, yeah, in the legal aspect of that, could be carried out by faculty of law, for example. So it's, I think, it making you not only, yeah, focus only in biobank, it should be organized in what we call it transdiscipline approach, and then still the direction is also both direction, business, economic business, and the other one is social business. And it is will be balanced. Without business, you cannot social only. And philanthropy, sometimes we can support it, they can support it. But on the other hand, in continuing the development of the idea and implementation of the idea, I think is need this kind of organization.
We will try to move forward with those suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Buyaya, do you have to?
Yes, I have to.
Okay, do you have? She has to move to the next agenda.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the sharing expertise and information and the discussion, Buyaya. I think a round of applause first for Buyaya. And we will continue with. No. We still have time. Prof. Rika, would you like to add on about yeah? You are not. How can you be a layperson?
I'm layperson in biobanks, but because you gave me the task to talk about research challenge in using biomaterials from biobanks that Yaya have been mentioned, maybe I just show some issues that raise in the research area. How can I move forward? Yes, this is in the Western country. They already make a preventive diagnosis for somebody who have high risk in the like Angelina Jolie, but we didn't start yet. Even for the for precise diagnosis, we only use if we got funding for research. So no routine diagnosis molecularly conducted. And so far, also because of BPJS, because of insurance, there are many cut it down. So this is, of course, in my opinion, if we want to go ready for personalized medicine and precision medicine, it become unethical, I'm afraid. Yeah, this is what happened with Angelina Jolie, have been double mastectomized, but 2 years later, she appeared with ovarian cancer. So mastectomy cannot save her from suffering from cancer because the genetic defect is already there. Yeah, I think this is human genome. I have been discussed by Dick and also Yaya, LC, ethical, legal, social impact, and human genome for Indonesia, of course, is very beneficial. But again, because of the limitation of infrastructure, limitation of budget that been given by the government, we only have we conduct this approach for research, not yet for practicing. So for practice. So as Dick mentioned, that we should be ready to prepare the ethical, even though it is not yet applicable. I think that will be very good. And talking about genome, we cannot just say, oh, mutation for colorectal cancer treatment right now. If there is some mutation on EGFR, also you will get this treatment. In fact, by giving this treatment, the response is only very low. So we should do a comprehensive approach. But again, this need to have more sophisticated facilities like NGS. According to the modern medicine, NGS should be available in every hospital if we want to give the best approach, the best clinical care for the patient. Unfortunately, not yet. So this is the comprehensive approach. But again, if we want to do a comprehensive approach, there will be a lot of big data. And we should prepare be ready to have to organize a big data. So, I think Pak Anies, we rely on you. How can we work together and be ready for the future? And for precision medicine, Dick, Prof. Yati and our group already working multidisciplinary together between clinician, basic, and also community to have what we call it translational research. And we don't know whether a translational research ethic committee also should be developed to face, because there is a between basic to clinic, something clinic ethical issue, but also from clinic to community, and also application for the more population, also some ethical issue that can be raised on that. And talking about biobank, I'm afraid it's not only tissue, but also any kind of biofluid. So even though urine, saliva, milk, this can be very precious materials. Yeah. Okay, I think we continue. So it has been explained very clearly by Yaya. Security, and it should be comprised, biobank comprised of from policymakers, patient, researchers, publics, to make better healthcare, national healthcare, and quality, better quality of management of the patient. And yeah, talking about ethics regulation, because there is some country related to like GDPR, European, and then ACMG, this is America. I don't know whether Indonesia should have its own regulation, Mas Anies. So maybe this should be also think about how can we proceed further. We not just following European or America, but we also have our own regulation. Yes. And then for the high throughput, if we do doing an NGS, there is some ethical risk can be faced by us because of the discrimination. Medical decision guided for personalized medicine between the have and the poor. This is can be make a discrimination for ethical, but also for inequity, so economics inequality. So it also can be a problem in the in this issue for precision medicine, personalized medicine. I think I don't repeat again the consent. Consent should be not only once, but can be several times. Consent for present research, and then after finish, then consent for future research. And if we want to release the data, we should have another consent. Consent for release the data into public database. Okay. Yeah, this is for aspect. I think Mas Anies, Dr. Anies already mentioned about for aspect of big data ethics, identity, privacy, ownership, and reputation. And that GA4GH, Global Alliance for Genomics Healthcare, is offering collaboration. They provide ethical and regulatory infrastructure, IT solution, and practical support to enable data to be shared globally. So if I don't know whether you as a center or we as a center can proceed straight away, or it should be go through nationwide. So this is NGS again. NGS is a must in modern era of clinical practice. And I hope UGM will have this NGS soon. Yes, and then for the ethical issue, tumor board model for the future is not like the conventional team. The conventional is only consist of pathologists for pathological diagnostic, radiology for clinical MRI, oncologist and surgeon. But for the future, it should consist of bioinformatics, researchers, biologists, geneticists, bioethicists, yeah, should be in the group in addition to radiologists, pathologists, and also oncologists. I think this is all about, this is country law reform commission. Should we also have this kind of regulation in our country? In Indonesia, I think we haven't had yet, but Ekman Institute have been appointed as Indonesia Human Genome Center in Jakarta, but it has been stated that no single institution can do the human genome for a population. It should be approached by many institutions together. So in conclusion, from research point of view, because post-genomics era has been started and this brings the good for human being, that we need advanced genome technology that not yet on place in Gajah Mada, but have been somewhere in Indonesia. So we should move forward and we should collaborate, because no single country, no single institution can achieve its diversity alone. So global collaboration is needed, and we should participate together, as mentioned by earlier Yaya, scientists, policymakers, politicians, clinicians, patients, researchers, laws makers, and community to be able to contribute the best to our society. I think that's it. That's all what this is for from the research point of view. And I think with that better wait for Pak Dick Willem, and then we will have another discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Rika, for the information and expert sharing as well. Do we want to have some comments or questions first before we move on to Prof. Dick Willem's talk? Maybe we can move to Professor Dick Willem's talk and how is it in Netherlands,
Yes.
your experience?
Okay. Yeah. So thank you again. I will be mainly talking about experiences that we have in the last couple of years and the background of biobank ethical biobank assessment, because that's what I'm really going to talk about. I would like to start with an example of a biobank that we've assessed. So first to explain to you maybe a little bit is that in my hospital we have a biobank ethics committee. So it is specifically there to assess the ethics and the regulatory issues of all new proposals for biobanks. And they have to go through that committee. And I'm one of the people. I'll explain you a bit more about the committee, but I'm one of the people on the committee. So let me start by an example of a biobank that was submitted to us in February. So just a couple of months ago. This was a biobank that came from the proposal came from the Department of Obstetrics. And the biobank had the aim of collecting both tissue and clinical data for pregnancy research. That was the quite broad general aim of the biobank. And what they wanted to store, what they want to store, is samples of 5,000 women. That's their aim, to have different samples of 5,000 women. As you see here, they will want samples, at least 10 samples per woman, because these will be more than one sample. So there will be 10 samples. So this will be a biobank consisting of 50,000 samples. And their idea was to store that for 50 years. And what the tissues, so the biobank would consist of tissue and clinical data. Those are the two main elements. And the tissue would consist of vaginal and rectal swabs that the patients themselves should gather. It would consist of urine. As you said, it's more than blood. It will consist of urine, of amniotic fluid, because these are women who have already finished their pregnancy. So amniotic fluid, and biopsies from the placenta, from the umbilical cord, and oh, vliezen is Dutch. Yeah, I mean, what's the English word for that again? So the surrounding that surrounds the baby. What's the English word for it? I don't recall. Yeah, amniotic sacs. Yes. So that was the tissue that they wanted to. So it's even more than 10 samples per person. I think it would be in the region of maybe 100,000 samples. And apart from that, they wanted quite a lot of clinical data related to the pregnancy. So all kinds of things about the pregnancy related to, let's say, pregnancy hypertension, complications, all kinds of clinical data. So this was the crucial part of the, and that was offered to us to assess ethically. Do you see any ethical problem here, or any ethical thing that you would want to address in the biobanks? If you were in the biobanks ethics committee, what would be an issue here to speak about? Sorry, how about the informed consent? Of course, yeah. Informed consent is always one of the issues. But what's the problem? You could ask people this. I mean, what is the real issue in informed consent? Yeah, the purpose of the collection, yeah, is very broad. So it's in fact everything related to pregnancy. So that's one. Informed consent is one of the issues. So we look at the informed consent forums. And we don't have, contrary to what Dr. Yaya said, we don't have an opt-out system systematically. Because here I think you would have an opt-out. So people could say, I don't want to participate. But they don't have to say they want to participate. No, so there's not an opt-in system saying I want to participate, but there's a system in which you participate unless you say that you don't. That's the opt-out system. And for secondary, she said that for secondary tissue, so for leftover tissue, there would be an opt-out system. So yeah, in fact we always do opt-in unless it is impossible. But we, in fact, always do opt-in. And then, so this is what they wanted. There's another issue that for us was important. That's the fact that they wanted to do specific biopsies for the biobank. Usually we accept only material that is not specifically taken for the biobank, and especially not biopsies, because they may have more risk from that. But then the placenta has already been born, of course, in this case, and the umbilical cord is already outside, so you don't harm the woman. But usually we don't accept biopsies specially taken for a biobank. We do accept biopsies if they're leftovers, but not this. So the biopsies were a bit of a problem for us, or something that you should discuss. And there's one other element. Don't know if you see it. It's on the slide that we thought was something to think about, at least something special. No. Well, yes, of course. That's a bit peculiar, but it's not ethically unacceptable for us, at least. It may be unacceptable for the people to do that, but no, I'm talking about the 50 years. Because storing tissue for 50 years may mean that the tissue survives the person. And it's a very long period. So it's very difficult to see what is going to happen to your tissues after 50 years. So we asked them to justify that they really had to keep, and that it was useful also to keep the tissue and the biobank for 50 years. And finally, they had good reasons. What we commented was that they should think again about the biopsies, think again about the 50 years, and we checked their informed consent form to make it as clear as possible. But then finally, this biobank has been accepted for storage in my hospital. Yes.
It started 15 years.
Yes.
Is that a specific goals?
Well, no, when we asked why they wanted 50 years, because we usually have a period of about 20 years. But they wanted 50 years. And the only thing they said is that it is such important material and so peculiar that they wanted it for 50 years. And I think we brought it down to 20 because we were not convinced that there were special reasons. Yeah, so that in the final judgment, I think we brought it down to 20. 50 is really very long. And you know, most biobanks, but this is quite a big biobank, but if you use it for research, it will obviously diminish because samples are used. Yeah, so it diminishes. And you can use them, I mean, using samples for 50 years, probably it will be finished before 50 years. Yeah, so it's not, so, right. I was, the Biobank Ethics Committee does not have a legal basis in the Netherlands. So it's a bit like here. There's no legal obligation for people to submit a biobank to a Biobank Ethics Committee. But there is a very strong pressure to do it. And this is a document that we use as a guideline that has been issued by the Dutch Federation of Academic Medical Centers. This is a code of conduct for responsible use of tissues and cells. So, and this is what we use. And in fact, all biobanks in the Netherlands, even though there is no legal obligation, they're all assessed within the universities. What we don't know is all kinds of private biobanks. So let's say biobanks by pharmaceutical industries or other organizations. We have no way of assessing them. But within clinics and universities, we assess all biobanks on the basis of this document generally. So let me see. Let's go on. I think there are a few ethical issues that always come back in our assessments of biobanks. One is the burdens and risks related to collecting the tissues. So that's one of the reasons why we say that generally we don't accept that there are specific biopsies taken for biobanks. If you have to collect that tissue, you may use them if it's already there, but you're not allowed to collect biopsies only for biobanks, because we consider that it is too risky because of the fact that there will be no advantage for the person. It's really only used for further research. So there's no benefit for the person who donates the material. So therefore, we don't accept tissue to be, so biopsies to be taken specifically for biobanks. So that's one of the issues. We look at and in fact, the only thing we up to now accept are ways of collecting data that are very little burdensome, such as a blood draw. A blood draw is in fact the maximum. Taking saliva or hair or skin scrapes or that kind of things, that's what we usually accept if it's done specifically for the biobank. So this is the first ethical issue that we try to, that we always discuss. The second one is about, you're quite right to mention informed consent as one of the big problems, because can you get true informed consent from someone if you cannot tell him what happens to the tissue? So if you don't know what will be the research question, let's say in 49 years for the example that I gave, the period is very long, so you have no idea what will be done, and especially also because the material may be issued to other people. So other researchers may use it for different aims, and it may even be used for commercial so it may be used for pharmaceutical industries or others. They may have different aims, and so in fact you don't really know what will happen with the material, and that really sometimes is an important problem. I'll have an example later on where that's a problem. Excuse me. Then another issue is the possibility of withdrawal. So we were talking this morning about the possibility of to forget. So yeah. So here we also have the problem of withdrawing material. So will patients have the possibility of having their material withdrawn? One of the big issues always is, are we talking about anonymous material or not? Because if the material is anonymous, there's no possibility of withdrawing. So if my material is in a biobank but has been made completely anonymous, then they can't find me back in the biobank. So they can't remove my material. It's not possible. So this really is an issue, the possibilities of withdrawal from the biobank. In research ethics, we always say that patients should have every possibility to withdraw from a trial. But here it's difficult because it has become difficultly visible. If it's not anonymized, because a connection has to be made with clinical data, so if it's just coded, then of course it is possible to withdraw the data. But not anymore after it has been issued. Because the biobank that has issued the material cannot go to the organization that has got the material to withdraw it. That's too complicated. So it's only when it stays in the same biobank and when it's coded that you can say to an organization, I don't want to be in the biobank anymore. I'm not sure, it may be a theoretical problem because I don't think many people will think about the tissue that's in the biobank, and they will probably not want to withdraw. Now, this is always an issue. How do you deal with use by other people? So with issuing and further use, and especially when it concerns commercial organizations. And we have a rule in our Biobank Ethics Committee that if the data is issued to an organization with a commercial purpose, this should also be assessed by the Biobank Commission. So then nobody is allowed to issue the tissue and the data to a commercial company without the permission of the Biobank Assessment Committee. There's one a difficult issue here sometimes also, and that is if the material could be issued to other countries. And the country that's always most difficult, I said that a few times yesterday, is almost the most difficult is the United States, because they have privacy laws that allow the government and the state much more easily than, at least in Europe, to go after material of persons, and especially if it's not anonymized, there may be quite a risk to have your tissue and your material sent to the United States. So we have a specific discussion always with researchers about the use in the United States. And we want extra guarantees that it will be impossible for police and authorities in the US to link a certain tissue to a certain person in Europe. And the last issue that we usually discuss, and it's also in the report that I just mentioned, is about the disclosure of future results. And what I mean by that is that it could be possible that the material in the biobank is analyzed a number of years later with new diagnostic possibilities, and that information comes available that is important for the person who donated the tissue. And it's not possible to know that in the beginning because of new diagnostic techniques and maybe new relationships. So one of the things that should always be stated is whether the donors of the tissue will be informed in the future if something relevant for them comes up from the material. And if it may also be something relevant for their families, if it's about a genetic, some genetic change or modification that is important for their family. So, and it obviously here too, it's impossible to do that when it is anonymized material, but you could do it when it is coded material. So these are in fact the 5 things that we are always discussing in our biobank committee. Oh, this is a bit late, but let me see. Just so it's what a biobank is. In fact, is a collection of cells and tissues, and of coded patient data related to disease or anonymized. It may both come from patient care or from scientific protocols. And most of our biobanks are related to scientific studies. The example I mentioned was not related to scientific studies. So they were really secondary to patient care, but many of them are related to scientific studies. And they may also be specifically obtained for the biobank. So that's the case of the public health biobanks that we were talking about, that we have in Amsterdam and that you're trying to set up here as well. So these are volunteers who give their tissue to a biobank and their cells. And now we've had biobanks, and Dr. Yaya already talked about it. We've had biobanks for a long time in the AMC, and they were completely different over different departments. So the pathology department always had biobanks from I think the 1960s onwards, but other departments also stored tissue, but in an unorganized way. So they had their own freezers, and they put them in with their own labels and with or without consent, and so it was really unclear what happened. And we call that historic biobanks. Yeah.
We consider the tissue kept in the department as biobank? Or?
Yeah. Well, we have quite an easy definition of what a biobank is. If you want to keep tissue for longer than 5 years, then it's a biobank. If it's shorter than 5 years, we usually don't consider it a biobank because it may still be part of care, so of aftercare, and it may also still be part of a scientific protocol because you have to keep the data to maybe for controlling or monitoring reasons. But after 5 years, as long as if it's longer than 5 years, then it would be a biobank. So it's not all the tissue. It's really the tissue that's been there for a longer time. And those are the protocols. So if in a scientific research project, the researcher want to collect the material for, let's say, 4 years to be able to finish their study, it's not a biobank. But as soon as it goes over 5 years, and especially if they want to keep it for completely other protocols, then it becomes a biobank. Yeah. So the ethical attention to biobanks is of a recent date. It's really something, I think, of the last 10, 15 years. And I think as often, this kind of attention is related to scandals. Because there have been some scandals with biobanks, like, for instance, the problem that yesterday was addressed, the HeLa cell line. That was a scandal that had a lot of impact on the ethical assessment of biobanks. The whole ethical assessment of scientific research is also because of scandals, because things have gone really wrong. And I think and it's also the size. It's also the fact that, or the scale at which biobanks are made. I think all academic hospitals in the Netherlands, I'm sure, all have biobanks now. And also non-academic hospitals begin to have biobanks. So it's the scale too that makes that we pay more attention to biobanks. And this is a bit the type of biobanks. Well, this is the public health biobanks, and this is the clinical biobanks. And our committee mainly assesses clinical biobanks, so related to patient care or related to research with patients, but less with public health related biobanks. So what we do now here in the AMC is that we, as I told you, we have a specific subcommission for biobank assessment. It's a subcommission of the ethics committee of the IRB since about 10 years. It has no legal status, but the board of the university, the board of the academic hospital makes it in fact obligatory to assess every new biobank. So as I already said, the assessment takes place when tissues are kept for longer than 5 years. And before, we don't do it. It's a small committee. It's not like an IRB, which is usually a bit bigger. But this is a small committee consisting of a geneticist, a pediatric geneticist, who's the chair, consisting of a layperson, a legal expert, and an ethicist. So that's the 4. And the director of the Biobank AMC is an advisory member. So he's not on the committee, but he's an advisory member. So what it does is that it assesses about 4 to 6 protocols per month. So it's also less. It's less than for the ethics committee, but it's still quite a lot, I think. So we have like 150 protocols a year. It's quite a lot. And what it also does is that it monitors the issuing of samples. So of biobanks that have been accepted, that have had a positive judgment, we will ask the PIs who are responsible for the biobank, or in fact it is in our hospital, it's the head of the department who's responsible. Not the PI, but the head of the department. And the reason for that is that PIs change a lot. So PIs come and go, and most of the biobanks are of very long duration. So the original PI will have disappeared for a long time when the biobank stops. And there will always be a head of the department. So the PI may disappear, but there will always be. So the head of the department is responsible, and he's also responsible for issuing the samples. So, and the committee monitors the issuing retrospectively. So we get a yearly report from every biobank about what they issued, what they gave away to other people. And then we monitor that, and if we have questions about issuing, we will ask them to explain to us why a certain clinic got the tissue while we think it's not appropriate or something like that. Except for samples that will be issued to a commercial partner, so to a company, then we want to know before. So we do retrospective monitoring except for commercial use. Because there we want to really make sure that it's a reliable commercial partner. So this is in fact the activity of the Biobank Assessment Committee. Let's see what I have here. So the procedure of the committee is that the researchers have to submit a certain amount of documentation about the biobank to the committee, and it consists of a protocol, and the protocol describes a number of things: the aims, the kind of tissue that will be, and the kind of data that will be stored in the biobank. It will tell what the aim is, and what organizations might benefit from the biobank, so might get the tissues when they're issued. So that's all in the protocol, and who is responsible for the biobank. And then they have to submit biobank regulations. So the governance of the biobank is a very important point for us. So they have to specify who is responsible, who has delegated responsibilities, who can do what in the biobank. So there has to be a contract, let's say, or a specific regulation about who does what in the specific biobank. So a summary has to be given, and there has to be a patient information letter about the biobank. Dr. Yaya already mentioned that sometimes for patients it's difficult that they have to sign things. They don't want to sign sometimes. Or sometimes they don't want to sign two things, because we have, in general, we have specific information letter, so informed consent for the biobank and for the research. So if the biobank comes from a research program, we will have different, separate patient informed consent. Sometimes patients consider that unnecessary. They find it very difficult to, and sometimes even they don't want to sign. They are okay for the use of the tissue, but they don't want to sign. That was the example that she mentioned. What you can do in those cases is that you don't sign, because an oral consent is also consent. But you should have a witness then. So someone who writes down, I heard him say that it was okay, something like that. But even that may be too much for some patients. But well, then they will not participate, I'm afraid. So a specific information letter should contain information about the biobank. So about the aim of the biobank, the duration of the biobank, the kind of tissue they want, what will be done with the samples, and what will be done if something would be discovered from the samples that could be identified back to the patient. So those are the really important things that should be in the patient information letter. Oh, I said the protocol so specifies the aim, the duration, generally 20 years, sometimes 50, and the type of materials. Especially DNA is often stored, of course, and that we want to know all that. That's what the protocol in general does, and the regulations I already said to you that it will have to have rules about who is in charge, where the samples may go to, and what the policy will be to inform the donors of information that may be relevant for them. So I already said this. Oh yeah, the patient information letters should always have a clause on what if they want to stop their participation in the biobank. So it should be clear that so it's only possible when it's not really anonymized, but there should be something apart from all the information about the biobank. It should also contain something about the withdrawal of tissue. And this is what I already said. Usually we do accept data collection specifically for a biobank, also when it concerns patients in our hospital. So it's not only in public health biobanks, but also in the hospital. And we do agree usually, in fact, almost always with blood, saliva, urine, hair, things like that. But we usually don't agree with liquor, for example, or biopsies, or more intrusive ways, tissue that you can only get through more intrusive procedures. I already said that. So these were the issues, as I already said, that we tend to assess when we do our work as a Biobank Ethics Committee. It's about burdens and risk. It's about consent, possibilities of withdrawal, further use, and how future results will be disclosed or not. So I have another example, just to this is also, I think we had this last month in our Biobank Assessment Committee. It's a bit specific. This is called the Heart Biobank. We've had a brain biobank in the Netherlands for about 30 years already. So that was for people who consented to donate their brains for further brain research. Yeah, well, yes. Fortunately, post-mortem. Although maybe for some people it wouldn't be a bad idea to do it, but no, this was post-mortem. Yeah. But then people agreed to donate their brains for further research, and there was a brain bank that was located in it's still there. That's located in our hospital, and now similar to the brain bank, heart researchers wanted to establish a heart bank. And what they want is of about 180 people over the first 2 years. They want about 60 samples of heart tissues of about 180 people. Let's say 200 people. So that'll be like 1,200 heart samples. And they want to store this too for 50 years. And the first group they want to get this tissue from are people with a specific genetic heart disease that they want to investigate further, and they want to approach those people and ask them if they would be willing to donate their heart for further research after they would die. Yeah, it's post-mortem. I already told you. Yeah, with the heart, it's even more. The heart is even more difficult to do it before death, of course. And what they had as an issuing policy. Oh, so the recruitment. Oh, yes, that was one of the important points. How do you get these people? So they may be patients in your outpatient clinic. Are you going to ask those patients? Are the doctors going to ask those patients? Because they're treating these people, and they're treating them to remain healthy. Are they going to ask them to donate their heart when they're dead? It sounds a bit difficult to do, especially these are severely ill people. And so they decided that they wanted to do it through a patient organization. And so they would issue an advertisement among the people in their organization to ask if after death they would be prepared, if they would be willing to donate after death. And over the internet, and there's also different websites that they wanted to use. And the issuing policy would be mainly going to academic centers, but they say we also want to have the possibility to issue to commercial partners. So do you see any ethical issues that an assessment committee should look at specifically in this biobank, the heart biobank? Yeah, which ones then?
Because in my mind, biobank is very sensitive and use various kinds of materials. It is not only the ethical commission will be needed, but what do you think if we also all could be regulated by a legal body? Legal body. That is might be more to strengthening the development of biobank itself. Without legal body, I think it's still commercial or so that it's it's too weak, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it could be. Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, because this is taken from post-mortem donation, and the main aim is to have something research, maybe to produce a specific product that can be commercially marketable. So the ethical issue is if it become a commercial product. So how can then have some impact on the patient, on the family,
So yeah. So that's in fact 2 points. One is about that what we do now in the Netherlands is that we have a committee that has no legal basis. So people who want to make a biobank and that don't want the assessment, they can do it. And that may be too weak a basis. Yeah. Especially, I think I'm quite sure that within the universities, things are well organized. I'm not worried about the universities, the university biobanks, because there is a quite clear set of rules that you have to comply to, and those rules have been set up by the universities themselves. So they will probably, and they do follow. They have their commissions, and they follow that. So I'm not sure it's needed for the universities, but it may be needed for commercial biobanks and for all kinds of biobanks outside of university hospitals, like in smaller hospitals too. So I think there is a need for maybe a stronger regulation than by the organizations themselves. But I'm not so sure. What we should see is if there's really a lot of things going wrong. It's a bit the same thing as the legal basis for research ethics. In our country, it's only for medicine. So it's not for psychology, anthropology, and other social sciences. It's only for medicine and for animal experiments. But the rest of the research ethics is left to the universities. And it's a bit the same here. So it's in fact left to the universities to decide how they do the ethical assessment. But it may not be sufficient in all countries. So it may be needed to do that more strictly. And then about the commercial partners, it may be used. I think it would mean that you don't know if it's of a benefit for the people. You don't know anymore what will happen to your tissue and what it will be used for as soon as it is. So what we always demand from researchers is that commercial use should be made optional for the patient. So the patient gets the question: Do you agree with issuing your tissue to commercial partners? And if the patient doesn't agree, then it's not allowed. So and that's for this reason, because especially in commercial use, you have no idea what's going to happen, and the product may not be in your benefit. There's also people who say that as soon as this kind of tissue is used commercially, then the donors should benefit financially.
like HeLa.
Yeah, like HeLa.
Family can get some.
Right, compensation for it, yeah. And there are people who say if that happens, if a commercial organization uses the tissue and makes profit from it, then it would be justice that the donor of the tissue is rewarded. And I think that's true. I've always thought that, even also for medical research, I think if it's used for commercial uses, for instance, a new drug that can be sold and that they can make millions of dollars with, then the people who have contributed to that drug should be compensated, in fact. And the same here, even more here, because here they don't benefit. So they give away their tissue for altruistic reasons, and they may be used for profit. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But we don't ask it yet. But we might start asking that there's a contribution. It will possibly be quite difficult to organize and to control and to monitor.
So your concern about that, I think you can have committee or university.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The university, I think, is responsible for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I think so too. Yeah. Yeah. So but we will be very. I think usually we will not permit issuing to commercial partners, because we always say that the biobanks are for research and not for marketing. So it should really be serious research to issue. You can only issue for really serious research and not for simple marketing purposes.
But the output of the research, I think it will be useful not only for commercial company, but also company for the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is also,
yeah. So there's two sides to it. Yeah. 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 So I think I had one other example that I'd like you to look at. This is from one of our oncologists in the AMC, one of the PIs, who does a lot of research in pancreatic and esophageal carcinoma. And she wanted to start a biobank with the aim of finding biomarkers for treatment success. And the second reason was to make a cell line. Cell lines. So, and that's called, oh yeah, there should be lines here. What we call them organoids. So organoids are cells that have characteristics of the organ that you want to treat, or the disease that you want to treat. So what she wanted to make from the tissue is living cells that would continue to live for a longer time. And what they wanted for it is, this was linked to a research protocol on new treatments for esophagus carcinoma. And what she wanted was to store blood, tumor tissue, duodenal tissue, which they had from the scientific protocol. So that had already been accepted, that they could take that. And so it's all from an IRB approved scientific protocol. What they wanted to do is a storage for 15 years, and but to make cells for it, out of it, for 15 years. So one of the questions that we had, the first is, of course, organoids can live longer than 15 years. So it's not a biological border. It's a decision that you should have to throw them away after 15 years. So you should have to kill the cell line, let's say, after 15 years. So that's what she proposed here. But they also wanted to issue the cell line, be able to issue the cell line to other researchers in other universities, or even maybe in companies. So the question then becomes, what happens? How can you guarantee that if you say we store them for 15 years, not longer, if you issue those cell lines to other researchers or to companies, who's going to say that they're also going to do that? So if you promise that to a patient, how can you keep your promise if you reissue the data to other people? So that was one of the big issues. So what the researchers then said when we asked this, they said, yes, we need a contract with everybody who we reissue the cell line to, that they will kill the cell line after 15 years. Because we promised that to our patients. So they promised in the informed consent, they promised that it will not be like with the HeLa cell line, which was discovered after 20 years, when they found out 20 years, I think, after her death, that they found out that there was still a cell line available. They don't want it here. So they want to stop the cell line after 15 years. So what in this case, which is one of the first cases of organoids made as a part of a biobank consisting of a living cell line. It's one of the first cases that we had. And we said that because this is so new, and we really want to monitor this very closely. And so, for instance, the reissuing of the cell line would always need the permission of the committee. So you can't do that without having obtained first the commission to reissue it to a certain person. And especially under what conditions. So this is the kind of things that we now begin to see. So biobanks are beginning to become more complicated and also ethically more complicated. It's not just a bit of blood that you store anymore, but you have different and ethically also complicated forms of storage and of tissue in biobanks. So that's why I think I do agree with you. I think biobanks need ethical assessment, and the best way to guarantee that is that it is under the law. So it should be under the law for study assessment, but in any case, I think biobank assessment is a necessary thing, especially because they become ethically more complicated than they were before. So it's necessary to do it, and well, we do it in a separate commission, so it shouldn't burden the IRB that's already overburdened, of course. So not the Ethics Research Committee. This can be very well done in a separate commission, and they will be speaking the ethical issues. As I said, are the issuing policy that people have. Cell lines, organoids will be a new ethical issue. Informed consent will remain difficult here, and also privacy issues will continue to be important in the assessment of proposals of biobanks. So I really would advise you to start up this kind of work, and I think I agree with you, Professor, that it would be good to have a legal basis for it, but that may take some time. Legal stuff is always slow. So I would start now by starting to assess. And I think we have good experience with doing that. Yeah. So that's what I was planning to tell you.
Thank you, Prof. Dick, for your sharing of expertise and experience. How is it going in the Holland, in Netherlands? Questions, discussion, comments? Prof. Rika?
You mentioned about this have separate subcommission compared to IRB, and what is the difference? And then the second one is about assessment, because it contains thousands of samples, and you mentioned about assessment. How can we assess the tissue in the so what actually assessment mean?
Okay, right. Okay, yeah. Good. So I wasn't clear about that, maybe. Sorry for that. Yeah. The difference with the IRB is there's one big difference. The IRB has a legal basis, and the Biobank Commission doesn't have a legal basis. So that was one reason to separate the two. And the other difference is that a complete IRB assessment involves a lot more things than a biobank commission assessment. So I think it's a different form of assessment, really. You assess other things. So I think that's the reason to separate the two. And when I'm talking about assessment, what I mean is ethical assessment. So our biobank's assessment committee is only there for the ethical issues. So it's not for the quality of the samples. There's different people monitoring the quality of the samples. So we are not assessing samples, but we're assessing protocols. And we are at the end monitoring issuing. So we're monitoring a report about, so those are the two documents that we look at. Protocols, including patient information material, and yearly reports of mainly the issuing and of the organization of the biobank. And we also want to know, of course, on a yearly basis, if anything went wrong. For instance, if part of the biobank got lost due to technical problems or things like that, that also should be reported to the committee. But that's what we do. So we don't go into the biobanks ourselves. We only assess the documents and the protocols.
And who provide the grants for running all of these biobanks?
The grants for the biobanks. Yes. Well, they're usually part of the grants for scientific research protocols. So they can be part of a bigger protocol that is funded by, let's say, a big government organization. But sometimes they're also funded by the university. Even though the costs are enormous, I think most of the biobanks in the AMC now are funded by the university. But some of them many of them also come from research. Yeah.
Research specifically for biobank. I mean.
Yeah.
Certain research, but they give the sample to the biobank should provide some fees or something to the, or I don't know.
Oh, whether they should pay for putting, if there's a fee. Yeah, I think there's a fee. Yeah, they have to pay for the costs of the freezers and of the monitors and of the space that it takes. And usually researchers put that into their into the protocol, so into the budget of the protocol. And sometimes they're also financed by external organizations such as government, that kind of organizations. Yeah, I think it's a differing. In fact, I'm not even quite sure what the majority is, how the majority is financed. Might even be by the university itself. And I know there's also an initiative over the whole country for combined biobanks between universities. So there's a liver biobank, for instance, that is a cooperation between the 8 medical schools, and that initiative has been funded by the government. So they set up a connected biobank, all with the same type of samples and the same type of regulations, so they have a common governance structure, and those are funded by the government. Yeah. Any other questions or remarks? Yes.
To continue the last topic regarding the financial sustainability and also the governance mechanism. I think it is very important, especially for Indonesia, because I think when you mentioned about the networking between medical schools to agree that certain medical school already have good and appropriate infrastructures for biobank, and then all other university will commit and then work together and then develop a proposal and then continue for data collection and everything. But my question is, when you mention about 50 years biobank, whether the government already prepare for the budget for the next 50 years, and there will be no issue that if the next president change and then the budget will not continue, or I don't know. It is just would like to hear from the very developed countries. Because this issue in Indonesia is quite common. When the leader change, usually budget will be discussed from the beginning.
I think I think we have similar problems. I must say that I sometimes think that a 50 years biobank is a promise that you can't make, because you don't know if you will have the money to maintain it for even for 50 years, let alone for the continuation afterwards. So no, there's no provision in the beginning for the full 50 years. All they say is we want to do it for 50 years, and when we need the money, we're going to try to get the money. So we'll have later funding. But that's also a question of trust and hope. So all they say to patients, and I think you can't expect a government to reserve money for 50 years of biobanking. It's almost impossible. So what the important thing is what they promise to patients. So, and they will say to patients, we intend to keep this biobank for 50 years. But yeah, then if there's no funding anymore, then it will not be kept for 50 years. It's a bit the same thing as when we have research trials. Sometimes they say the trial will go on for 3 or 4 years, especially industry-funded trials. If the industry loses interest because there's a competing company that had about the same drug and they're already marketing, so it has no interest anymore, they just pull the plug. So they just stop the financing. And in fact, you would want that governments would be more cautious of the interest of the, but they're not always. But no, we have no funding for 50 years. So that's why I think the promise for 50 years is a bit a promise that they will try to keep it for 50 years. But they're not sure.
The intention.
Yeah, it's very long, really. Yeah, it's an intention. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice question. I've never really thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
It's constant problem in Indonesia.
Yeah, it must be too constant here.
So that's why one of our main discussion usually revolves around that.
Yeah.
Mas Azid would like to add? Or you want to ask?
Yeah, maybe my question is it's more technical about informed consent, because when Puyaya come to our hospital and explain about how they would like, or her group will, to the repository of the biobank, she said that the operator, the doctors, physicians who do the operations, the physicians who do the operations, the surgeons, they are the one who will collect the tissue samples. They are the one who will do the collecting data, collecting samples. But then we asked about the informed consent on how we do it. Is it separated from the operation itself? And then, so there will be two informed consent. First is the informed consent for the operations, and the second is the informed consent for the biobank. And then how they will do it. Is it together with the plan of the operations, the informed consent for the operation? Because in our opinion, in my opinion, when we do the informed consent for biobank, right before the operations and or right after the operations, then patients will, they will say, well, yes, that's up to you. But it can be, but their knowledge about their feelings about their tissues, the samples, it can change over time. So in the Netherlands, do you renew the informed consent? Because when you say will be taken for 50 years, but for the heart, that's for post-mortem, right?
No, not only. So
okay.
Also for pre-mortem. Yeah.
Okay. So do you renew the informed consent from the people who have samples, tissues in the biobank? Because people can change their minds, right? So
Yeah. Well, to ask about the procedure of informed consent asking to begin with, what for operations or for treatments, if the doctor also wants to keep a tissue, then they should ask that separate from the informed consent for the treatment. And it should even be clear that that patients have more time to think about that, and that there's even maybe more choice, so that it should be very clear that not participating in the biobank has no consequences for their treatment. So it's not a package deal. So it's not that once you want to be operated, then there's a condition that you give tissue to the biobank. It's not a package deal. So it's separated informed consent. And we always ask that they do that separate in time too. So they do it way before the operation, if they can do it, and they can always do that, in fact, or a long time afterwards. So that they can always throw away the tissue if the patient refuses. Of course, they keep it until then, and then they get the formal consent for tissue that is taken related to a scientific research protocol. We also ask that they do that separately. It may be in the same session of information, but it has to be clearly presented as two independent informed consents. And so there too, it must be clear that you can still participate in the research if you don't want to participate in the biobank. We don't ask for re-consent. So it's not that we, after 10 years, check if the consent is still valid or not. But we do say to people that they always, and we stress that they have the possibility to withdraw. But in fact, you could say that after the initial consent, we think it's an opt-out procedure. So then we don't ask for opt-in again, but we say, if you don't want it, just tell us and we'll remove what we still can remove. So that's in fact what the only difference is children. We sometimes have biobanks with material from children, leftovers or also research material. And when the children are younger than 16, it's their parents who have to decide. When they're between 12 and 16, it's both parents and child, but younger than 12, it's only the parents. And what we realized was that sometimes the parents give permission to store tissue in biobanks, but then when the child is 16 years or older, there will be tissue in biobanks that they have not consented in. So what we always ask is that consent is renewed. So after 16, they will be approached to see if there is still a valid consent for keeping the tissue in the tissue bank. And otherwise, it will be removed if they don't want it.
So it's quite clear how we should do it. We need to have to separate the informed consent process. You cannot mix it together.
No, you shouldn't mix it together, because then the pressure to say yes becomes too big.
And could
it
be
should
misleading.
really be an open question. Whether you do that or not is really up to you. And it doesn't influence your treatment or your participation in a research protocol.
And I think the separation of the time when you do each of the consent is important.
You mean with the children, or
between the surgery, like way before surgery or way after the surgery, so that not in a closer time, like an hour after you consent for the surgery, and then you get asked for then it get mixed up.
We always ask. Also with research, we ask how much time people get to reflect on their participation. So we do that for biobanks, but we also do it for regular research projects, and we want people to have the possible amount of time to reflect about their consent. And sometimes that's very brief, of course. If it's an emergency thing, then you can't wait for days. But very often they have some time to reflect.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Dick. Another question? Discussion? Comments? Dalam bahasa Indonesia juga dipersilahkan gado-gado. Di webinar? From the webinar participants? Do we have questions? No, we don't have questions. Okay. Prof. Yati, Prof. Narto would like to have final comments? Closing? Who can I offer to do the closing? Okay, so thank you everybody. Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu atas partisipasinya. Semoga diskusi kita seharian ini bermanfaat. Semoga nanti juga bisa membantu untuk mengembangkan dan masih bisa berminat dengan bioethics karena memang tujuannya ini juga untuk membuat forum dialog bioethics. Demikian tadi yang bisa kami sampaikan. Thank you Professor Dick Willems, thank you Professor Sofia Mubarika and all the source person and for the discussion. Sampai jumpa kembali di acara bioethics yang lainnya. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.